one of the things that we've been tracking at the Doorstep is there's definitely a growing concern with the question of how energy and environment relate. Climate is very important. Obviously, the pandemic and the strength or weaknesses of the global health system. So it seems that the UN is poised perhaps to become more, shall we say, relevant to the day-to-day lives of people in a way perhaps it hasn't been, given those concerns. Can you give us a sense of where this dialogue on energy is going, where the climate initiatives are going, and are countries finding that they are preferring to work through the UN to try to find common cause to solve these transnational issues?
Well, I think working through the UN on these transnational issues is the key and the necessity we have, the ability to set the norms, the framework, the common value. For example, in the Paris Agreement, to accept that the goal to deal with global warming is to cap the emissions of greenhouse gases so that we do not exceed at least, well, 2 degrees centigrade, but preferably below 1.5 degrees centigrade to avoid catastrophe within a few decades. And so the broad goal setting, the norms, the values that we can all share from every culture, from every legal system, from every region of the world, there has to be that locus, that centralized place. The framework then sets the tone and the aspirations and the ambition, and that's where the Secretary General's work is so important. So within each nation then, given a framework, such as we have in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which is the broad blueprint or roadmap, as people say, for national regulations, policies, legislation, litigation even, but within each national system. It comes back together because then states report back into the UN system. And this is true across the whole agenda. Now, the Secretary General has also issued a report this year called Our Common Agenda. And that's a document well worth reading. And then we have the whole body of international law that sets these kinds of norms and ambitions for the world community as well, and has been since 1945. So that's the framework. Now, where we come to today's crises, no one nation alone can solve climate change or create a system of energy that doesn't burn out the planet in the coming decade. So how do we deal with that? And I think we have some good models. The 2030 Agenda has the 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, starting with eliminate extreme poverty worldwide. If we don't deal with poverty, we're not going to get to peace and development and rights and dignity and all the other things that have been enshrined, if you will, in things like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Covenants on Rights, or in any number of treaties through the decades. So we have to remember that the framework is really important, and the framework is there. And the meetings at the UN provide that kind of monitoring and reporting function and a chance for states to get together. I think I've seen this certainly in the last 5 years. In every July, there's a meeting, something called the High Level Political Forum, and states come, civil society is there. And it's a discussion of how states have met their targets under each of the 17 goals, not only as PR, not just political rhetoric, but okay, here's a best practice. This is something we learned or we discovered that works in our special conditions in our country. Well, that might be a model for someone else. Then another state might report, well, we tried, but we really couldn't get there because of these reasons. We lack capacity. We don't have trained personnel. We don't have the technology and the ability to generate the data that we need to do the kind of modeling and planning that's necessary, say, for resource management, or to really address and to know what the problems are in society. Then other states can step up to the plate and offer capacity building exercises or training. So it's that kind of interaction can't be replicated. If we didn't have the UN, where would that take place? In a few isolated capitals? No, it has to be a global framework for global problems like climate change or loss of biodiversity. And I think those two are the biggest threats we have facing our entire planet. If we don't get it right by 2030, science is telling us it's due to human activity. So something has to change, and it has to change fast enough so that we can get into a better situation by 2030, or else we won't be there by 2050 when systems could collapse. Natural systems could simply implode on us. The warming of the planet could become so severe that we won't be able to grow food, that there will be vast migrations across the planet. Whole countries will be destroyed through sea level rise, populations on the move, and where to go. So the consequences are dire if we don't get this right. But the opportunity is there to do so by really using this kind of function of the UN as a meeting place, as a place for dialogue, as a place for setting norms and accountability, but in a positive way, not just pointing out weaknesses, but doing that in the spirit of helping one another.